So we're going to get started with our postcard project in Photoshop. So I have Photoshop opened and I'm going to create a new document in Photoshop. What we're going to create is a postcard of a location that we're going to put ourselves in and sort of make it look like a postcard with a border and some text. So to do that, let's go up to Photo here and choose Landscape 6x4. That'll set our width to 6 inches, our height to 4 inches, and our resolution to 300 inches. Excuse me, 300 pixels per inch. And you have this landscape orientation like a postcard would look. So once we get that started, you see that we're in a empty document here. And you can see where I'm at. I can zoom in, Control minus or Control plus to see what that looks like. I have my layers panel over here. If you've got other panels that you want to close, you can click on that little hamburger menu and you can say close tab group, so you get a configuration that looks a little bit more like mine. If I want to expand my toolbar over here, click on my double arrow so it looks like that, and this is the configuration that I like to work in, so we'll get continued from there. I'm going to grab a picture of a location. I'm going to Times Square, so I've done a Google search for that. I will right click on this image and save it. I'm going to save this image into my H drive so I can place it into my document. There we go. So I'm going to put this in here to my documents folder. I have a folder called yearbook design, and in here I will put it into a folder called postcard. Let me save that in there, and then back in Photoshop, instead of opening that document, I will go to File and Place. Now I can do Place Embedded or Place Linked. Embedded brings all the data in with it. Place Linked will just bring me a preview of it, and then it will add it when I export it. Since this is a relatively small file, I'll choose Place Embedded, and we'll go find that picture that I just saved out in Documents. It's in my yearbook drive, and I made a folder called Postcard. Make sure that we see that in there. Make sure that's saved. All right, there it is. We'll place that in there. Now when we bring it in and we place it, it's going to put it in as a smart object so that we can manipulate it. So it's going to come in with these handlebars here. Normally I wouldn't recommend making an image smaller or bigger, but in my case I would like to, smaller is fine, but making it bigger I wouldn't probably want to do. But I will go ahead and make this a little bit bigger, just like this. A little bit bigger is not going to hurt anything. Okay, so to get rid of those handlebars, I'll confirm the transform by pressing enter, and you can see that I have that layer here. Now we're going to add a border onto this. So remember, in Photoshop, when you want to have different objects, you want to put them in different layers. So down here at the bottom right hand corner, I'll click on new layer and then grab my marquee tool. Now I want the rectangular marquee tool, and I'm just going to select the area that I want to keep that's not inside the border. So something like this. Now if I grab my paint bucket, which is underneath my gradient tool, if you press G on your keyboard to go to gradient, then press and hold to fly out that gradient menu, you'll find the paint bucket menu. So if I click now, you're going to see it's going to fill that in, which is the opposite of what I want of my border. What I really want is this outside. So to do that, I'm going to hit Control Z to back up. Up in my select menu, if I choose inverse, it will flip that. So rather than selecting the inside of that selection, it'll select the outside. So now if I paint bucket, I fill in that border. Now I would like to soften this up a little bit. So let me undo that and hit Control D. So I'm going to start over with my selection. Maybe like that. And this time, before I hit inverse, I'm going To modify, I'm going to go up to select and modify and go down to feather. So feathering allows me to soften the edge of my selection. I'm going to choose a relatively big number, like 20. The bigger the number, the softer the feather. You're going to notice it kind of rounded that out. Now I will go to select inverse. And if I paint that with my paint bucket, you're going to see this soft edge. I'll hit Control D so you can see how that works. Now, I don't really like that color, so let's go back. I'll undo by hitting Control Z. And if I click on my foreground color here, it'll bring up a color picker. With the color picker open, if I move my pointer around, you can see it can pick up color. So I can come around my image, and I'm actually going to grab some color here from my image. Maybe this little teal here looks good. So with my paint bucket, I'll fill that in. That looks better. Control D. Now I actually don't want that solid of a border, and so what I will do is come over here to opacity with that layer selected and dial that opacity down a little bit and allow some of that image to show through. If I want to adjust the size of my border, so I have my mover tool here, Control T will allow me to transform that. So if I want to bring that out a little bit, maybe adjust just where that is, I can do that with Control T. Press Escape to forget that transform and Enter to commit that transform. Now that I have a layer on here with my border, I'm going to make some text. Okay. I'm going to grab text by clicking on the T and simply coming over and clicking T, or clicking here with my type tool. It made it really big. It just remembers the last size that it was. I'm going to type Times Square, and then I need to select that text to change the font. The easiest way to do that is by pressing Control A, and I will hit Control minus to zoom out so you can see where I'm at. Now your text may have ended up really small. Mine's really big. You can see my point size is pretty big here. I can dial that down. I'll hit Control 0 to zoom in there. And I'm going to choose maybe a different font here. Maybe something that might be a little bit of a script font. I normally see that on postcards a little bit. Yeah, we'll take a look. Maybe something like that will work just fine. All right. The one thing about working here in Photoshop is if I hit Control T, I can transform my text as well. I can rotate that, put that across there like this, scale it down just like any other object. Now you're going to notice that my text is a little hard to read because it blends into the background too much. There's not enough contrast there. To improve my text, what I'm going to add to my type layer is some effects. So with that layer selected, going down to my layer effects, this FX button here, you can see some different options that I have. So let's start by adding a stroke. Let's change the color of that stroke to be white. And just with that stroke, you can see that it's adding that. You can change the size of the stroke. I like how that's filling that in a little bit more. Okay, you can add maybe a drop shadow. I think for the drop shadow we need more of like a gray for that. Increase the size of that drop shadow, and you can play around with some of these sliders, just see what they're doing there. Okay, and now you can see that there's also an outer glow. I can add a color overlay, so that will change my color. A gradient overlay. If I go into gradient overlay, I can double click on the gradient. There's different ones to choose in here. Let's pick something that kind of matches what I've done. You can play around with those layer effects, but you can see very quickly I've made that text really pop out from here. This would be a good time to save. Let's go up to Save As. I'm going to call this Postcard, and it will save it as a Photoshop file. If it asks you to maximize compatibility, sure. So the next step of our postcard is to actually add ourself into the postcard. To do that, I need to take a picture of myself and then open that picture up. And I'm going to do that now. I'm going to open up the picture that I've taken of myself, which I have right here. Think about how you want yourself positioned in time, in your postcard, and make sure that it's appropriate for where you want to be. I think I want to place myself sort of right here by this Buzz Lightyear, kind of looking up. So right here in the foreground. Okay, I'm going to be relatively small, but that's okay. So there I am. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. Now let's talk briefly about types of editing techniques that you can do for your picture. One of the first things I like to do is take a look at the levels. So if I go up to the image menu here and go to adjustments, you can see there's a lot of adjustments I can choose. One of the ones I like to look at is levels. Levels shows you a graph of your image from light to dark. You can slide that back and forth. You can pull these sliders in to make adjustments to the light levels. You can also click on auto and let the computer kind of decide what it thinks is the best choice. Auto levels here, auto levels and auto color are two of the things that I like to do right away as I'm going into here. Let me see here. Yeah, here we go. Auto color and auto levels. There's auto color. And you can just see, made a slight adjustment, and easy to do that. There's also some shortcuts for that. Control-Shift-L for auto levels and Control-Shift-C. I kind of do that every time I open a photograph. Now, occasionally I might find that it's not very good, but most of the time that really cleans up the colors and lighting in my photograph. So, I'm a pretty irregular shape here. Using something like the marquee tool, it's not going to really help me select. I could come in here and use like the lasso tool, but it's a pretty rough thing to come around here. I really need a more precise instrument to cut out my image. So to do that, what I like to use is the pen tool. So in here you have a pen tool. The pen tool's just like you have in Illustrator. It's a vector drawing tool, okay? And I like to just work around the outside. So I'm going to do this rather quickly, but you could do it. You could zoom way in and do it, more quickly. So I can click and drag and make curves that I couldn't make with just like a marquee tool. So I'm going to go around the outside. You can zoom in and out. Take your time. The better you do it, the more time you take. And I'm just kind of dragging in the direction of my drawing. Okay, and because I'm recording this video, I don't want to take too long. I would probably take way longer to get this done, but I don't want you to be completely bored by watching me. But you want to drag in the direction that you're going. Click and drag. Click to get corner points. Click and drag to get curve points. And just the more you do this, the more you'll kind of get used to it as you go around here. Now there's my finger. I want to zoom way into there and get right around that very carefully. I'm just scrolling with my scroll wheel to go up as I go along. And you can kind of see how that's working along there. Now the nice thing about the pen tool, not only is it precise, but I'll show you in just a second here, it can be edited. You probably want to spend more time around your face than anywhere else, because if you cut off a part of, say, your pant leg, it's not going to notice too much. But if you cut off, if you have a nose that's sharp pointed, you're probably going to notice that. Oops. I can hit Control Z. I accidentally clicked when I was trying to scroll here. Now with my hair, I'm just going to do some Let's go back. Let's undo that. Let me get a little bit more hair. I don't have much hair, but whatever hair I've got, I'm just gonna kind of click on that. If you've got, you know, a buzz cut like I do, then you just can do that. If you've got long hair, you can go smooth on that. And one of the things you're gonna find as you get into this, that hair will be the bane of your existence. So when I get down to the very last point, it'll become a little circle on my pen tool. I'll close that. Now, below the pen tool, you find this arrow pointer. If you press and hold on that, you can get a black arrow pointer or a white arrow pointer. With the white arrow pointer, I can click on these points and I can make adjustments. So go around before you commit to this, and you can kind of move things around to say, okay, that's not quite how I want it, which is one of the things I really like about the pen tool. So you can see I'm all selected. Don't worry about this part of my arm, I'll get that later. To turn my path into a selection, I can go over to Paths, you can see it there, and I can right click on it and say Make Selection, or I can just hit Control Enter on my keyboard. Now another nice thing about these paths is if I'm save this as a Photoshop file, it'll save my path with it. I am going to feather that a little bit, just a little bit, because it softens the edge. So go back to feather, and just like a 1 pixel feather. I'm going to copy that, and then that's Control C on my keyboard, and come into here under Times Square and hit Control V. Now, you're going to be a lot bigger because I took this with the camera, and that's okay. While I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and use the pen tool to get rid of this part of my arm here. It's under this space, it's underneath my arm. Control Enter. Don't forget to feather if you feathered before so it matches. And I'm just going to press Delete to get rid of that. Now, I want to make myself look, I don't look like a super giant in Times Square. It's not the invasion of Mr. Peacock. So Control T on that layer. Now, okay, I can scale myself down. I want to match the biggest people on the front of here. Okay, so I think that's probably pretty good. Now you're going to notice that I am in front of this border. And to fix that, I need to put my layer here below that. I can drag this layer up and put myself in there. So there's a lot going on there to make that happen, but you can see what that looks like. It's kind of fun. I thought maybe I should put myself up in the picture. Okay, I am going to now save this. And if I want to be done with it, then I want to make sure that I export it. Okay, PNGs are fine. I like JPEGs for something with this much color. So if I go to Export As, I'm going to choose a PNG rather than, I'm going to choose a JPEG rather than a PNG for something that is, you know, this large and has this much quality. PNGs are okay, but they're better for smaller images. So under this format here, I'm just going to change that to JPEG. Hit Export, and then give it Postcard's fine. Okay. Good luck with your postcard. I look forward to seeing what you have. Oh, I need to. Yeah. This should be here. Times Square should be up, but you can change the order of that. Let's move this there. There we go. Yeah, that's fun. Good luck.